Clyde, we're going to have a pretty straightforward open here. I want to thank Carrie, friend of the show, for her generosity and her foresight in sending a graphic of the tribe swap tribes earlier this week when I guess it was leaked online or somebody figured it out or something. It was before the episode aired. I didn't look at it then, but I did look at it as I was watching the show, and it was really helpful to have a color coded. It's got 3 blocks for each of the new tribes and then each person's name color coded for their old tribe. And it just made my life a lot easier this week. Welcome back to Survivor Analytics, the show where one of us struggles to get through the episodes sometimes and the other is really good at remembering everything. I'm the voice of the people. My name's Jack. With me, as always, the true expert. What's up, Clyde?
What's up, party people? We're back. You're right, that graphic was really helpful. I've been my own set of graphics for this episode that not only included the players' original tribes, but also the different advantages and idols and lost votes. There's just a lot of moving parts at this point in the season, and it can be difficult to keep track of. So, major respect to Carrie for sending that out. This was a rough episode for me. I thought it was an entertaining one. I was happy that we got a swap. I think it's kind of ridiculous that we only see swaps in seasons where one tribe is decimated through the first 3 episodes. While I was happy with the game itself and the inclusion of that swap, the Thomas blindside is absolutely devastating. He was my winner pick after episode 1. My preseason winner pick was Stephanie. I pivoted to Thomas, and the rules that we apply on this podcast is that you only get 3 winner picks per season, and I've used up 2 of them. So,
Why do we have that rule?
because otherwise you can just keep guessing forever and ever, right? There needs to be a cap at some point.
But we're a month in to the season. There's 14 people left, and you're out. You have 1 pick left.
Yeah, but I know who's winning.
No, you don't. No, you don't, because you've used up 2.
On lock. I feel pretty confident in this one. More confident than I did in Thomas.
Oh, I feel like we have to roll some tape there because these past few episodes, you've been so high on the Thomas train. Oh my
Okay,
goodness.
so I was high on the Thomas train, and this is spoiling a little bit what I was going to say later in the episode, but I still think Thomas played incredibly well in that original Loggy tribe. I
Yes.
think he had one of the
Yeah.
best games through the first 3 episodes of the season, but once you introduce a tribe swap, you're adding a lot of elements that players like Thomas cannot necessarily account for. He can't account for the fact that the people on the bottom have an extra vote and an idol between the 2 of them. So I'm not as low on Thomas, even after his elimination, because I think there's a lot of outside factors that led to his boot. So,
I will agree. On his original tribe, played great. I'm a little lower on him this week because I don't like. We'll get into it. I'm lower on him this week. I'll just say that for now. But we're discussing episode 4 of season 48. I knew that. I just had to
yeah.
scroll up and check. And it's a classic. We open with the shot or one of the shots that Survivor production loves to have, which is the person soaking wet so that their hands are pruning and peeling, right? And we get that in Vula because it's pouring rain. Vula doesn't have fire. They don't have a tarp. They don't have anything. So they are soaked to the bone and miserable. It always makes me think of Jason, right, from Samoa.
Oh,
And
of course.
I will go down in history saying that his socks being burned led to his psychological defeat, right? I believe that to the core of my being, and I'll never forget the shots from Samoa of his feet soaked and like gross and miserable, right? That's 20 years ago or whatever. I don't know. We get it here again, and it's so nice to see an element of Survivor in the new era where they are still suffering. It's good to see Survivor being a show with some survival elements and not just 26 days of doing puzzles. And Cedric's not in a great spot either. Talk to me about Say and Mary's dynamic here in the opening of the episode, I guess. It's really the only thing we see.
Yeah, so up until this point in the season, Mary and Say have been bitter rivals. They've gunned for each other almost every week, or at least been on opposing alliances. And after last episode, Cedric was in tribal council and he told Mary and Say, "You two need to work together. We need to have order in this house. I don't need the kids arguing." Mary and Say go back to camp and they realize maybe we should take Cedric's advice and we can team up against Cedric, which is really funny that Cedric's own advice kind of puts himself in a bad spot. We get a quote from Mary. She says, "I really want to work with Say only because I don't want to work against her." And there's a entire saga where Say and Cedric go hunting for the idol and they leave Mary a little note back at camp letting her know that they're idol hunting just to build some trust between those parties. So it seems like there's a building alliance between Mary and Say, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Do you feel like this is a stable partnership for the long term?
No. No. I'll say this, if they ended up on the same tribe post-swap, yes. I think they could have continued to build something, right? They could have said, "Hey, we've buried the hatchet. We are, 2 people in a tribe." They could be like Chrissy and Mitch, I guess, right? Saying, "Hey, we're 2 of the 5. Let's work together." And hey, 2 out of 5 for another week on the island, building a relationship. They do clearly have a lot of respect for each other, but I don't see them ever coming back together, right? If they both make the merge, I would be shocked if they come back together to work in some sort of close alliance. I think the swap threw the wrench in that, and we're not gonna see it.
I think I agree with you. It's just difficult to have a stable alliance when there's no evidence supporting it. Mary and Say have not been on the same page at a single tribal council. And maybe there's a world where they go into the merge and they reconnect from there, but they're going to form other alliances in this swap section of the game. So they could reunite in the post merge, but I highly doubt that this will be an alliance where we get towards the end of the season and Mary and Say are going into confessional and saying that I want to go to the end with my number one from the Vula tribe.
Right.
This alliance could amount to something, but it won't be a season long storyline like we see from people like Eva and Joe. So, but that's really the only update at the Vula tribe. You want to jump over to the swap?
Yeah. This swap felt misleading. And here's what I want to open with here. I thought we were gonna see a challenge at the swap because it sure seemed to me, and I will admit, I was watching on 2x speed.
Oh, 2x speed. I thought you go 1.85.
I bumped it up a little bit. I was in a hurry today. Uh,
Okay.
I watch while I work out, and like I watch while I'm on my little stationary bike, and I am recovering from a knee injury, which meant that I just had to sit here and watch it and not distract myself with anything else. Which like I get kind of stir crazy if I'm just watching TV and taking notes. But
Yeah, you need a third task to
yeah,
run at the
I
same
do.
time.
I
Okay.
do. I have a terrible attention span. Anyway, I was convinced there was gonna be a challenge here. I thought when they came to this swap location, there was a lot of equipment there. It sure seemed like there was challenge material. And I was kind of expecting, "Hey, new tribes play for reward or something, right? Let's put you to the test right away." And instead, it was just a swap, and that's fine. I don't know, I was kind of disappointed by that. Is that a crazy request
To ask for another challenge in the episode?
to have a swap challenge just for reward, right?
I think that happens sometimes in Survivor
Yeah.
history. I don't know if I would really care about an additional challenge at this
No,
point in the episode. I'd care more about the alliances and dynamics that are happening at the beach because this is one of the
I
episodes this
know.
season where we don't get a journey, we don't get any kind of twist or gimmick outside the swap,
Right.
which I think made for a better overall product. When the swap is announced, the reactions are polar opposite. The members of the original Vula tribe are celebrating. Mary is dancing, throwing her buff around. Meanwhile, the players on Logi and Siva are visibly devastated.
I have a couple comments before we get into the new groups. Eva is having a tough time, right? This is exactly the sort of thing she was worried about, right? Losing her number one in Joe, somebody who knows what she's going through, knows her her background, how to help her through moments that might be challenging with her autism. We see her doing exactly what she told Joe she would be doing in a moment where she's struggling, which is playing with her hands. That's really tough. Immediately, right? Eva's my favorite player on this season by far. I fell for it and I was like, that broke my heart a little bit. Say in front of everybody talks about how she can't wait to play the middle of a new tribe. That's no good. And Thomas says basically, hey, I'm really bummed about the potential of a swap because I have all this knowledge about my current tribe. And I know about Bianca's lost vote. I know about Stars, Beware Advantage, right? All of that. And I don't want to lose that stuff. So that's all I've got. You want to start with Loggy, did you say?
Yeah, let's start with Logi. This is
Animal shot!
There's an animal shot? Okay.
We get two dolphins
Ooh.
scampering through the waves, having a great time. And not only are they dolphins, Clyde, they are spinner dolphins. Spinner dolphins are called spinner dolphins because they like to jump into the air and spin around. Or, as Wikipedia would put it, they are famous for their acrobatic displays in which they rotate around their longitudinal axes as they leap through the air. They can spin up to 7 times, do like 7 full 360s in one jump, which is pretty cool.
That's crazy, yeah. Who are the dolphins on this Logi tribe? What do they represent?
The dolphins represent Eva and Star, the two people coming in from the old Logi who are dancing around one another trying to find advantageous position in their new tribe.
Yep, I think it's a really good comparison, actually. I'm happy for you, Jack. We've had some rough animal shots in the past, but this is a nice redemption arc.
Come on,
So,
come
the
on.
composition of this new Logi tribe, it's 5 people. We have 2 original Logi members that Jack already mentioned, those being Star and Eva. Kind of hilarious that those were the 2 players who were actively gunning for each other the past 3 weeks, and now they're swapped onto the same tribe. You have those two. You have 2 members of the original Siva tribe in Charity and David. And then there's Mary, who doesn't know anybody here. But this is finally a chance for Mary to not play on the bottom. I highly doubt that she'll be targeted in this position because there's so few original Vula members. So if this group goes to tribal council, I expect Mary to be operating the middle. You mentioned Eva earlier and how she's your favorite character of the season. And when she rolls up to this new Logi tribe, she's immediately on the offensive. She's targeting Star. She goes to all the other players and says that Star has a beware advantage. She's on the outside of Logi. We got to get rid of her. And this was kind of surprising for me. Eva, in my mind, was someone who was very honest and very loyal. In the first stage of the game, she was kind of working behind Joe. Joe was the one with connections to the California girls, and Eva was kind of using him as an in. It wasn't a super active form of gameplay, but this feels like the first time all season where Eva is stepping up to the plate and trying to pin the vote on somebody else.
Yeah, this was a huge swing that I think was a bit of a misread. It sets a tone early that I like to see, and I'm being a little biased here
Okay.
because she gives up a lot right away. But I think she does a good job of going to the right people and saying, "Look, she was on the bottom. She's an easy boot." Establishing that early, there's a chance, right? She's giving up everything that she's got, and she is, right? We know she's giving up everything that she's got. But I do feel like it's a good move to say to the other members of her new tribe, "Hey, this isn't 2 on 2 with Mary in the middle. Like, we can form something new here." I like that. I like the idea of Eva and Mary working together. She and David form a pretty good bond here pretty quickly. David really in this episode feels like he's been trained, like he's had media training, right?
Oh,
Like
okay.
like this guy, I'm trying to decide if I think he's genuine. And I don't know if he should be allowed to be as good as a dude as he seems and also be that buff and good looking, right? Like, it kind of feels illegal. I mean, I guess he does live in a trailer, right? I mean, things haven't always gone great for him to end up there. And maybe, I mean, that's part of the stunt guy lifestyle, and he's just been kind of a nomad. But the guy in this episode is like, yeah, I treat my girlfriend like a princess because that's what she is. Okay, that's a green flag.
Well, quick note, ex-girlfriend. He says this episode that they broke up, which is weird because
What?
last week he said they were still together and that he wanted to win Survivor to prove that he could be financially stable. This week he said that they're no longer together. So I don't know what David's relationship status is like and how that affects his time on Survivor, but there's something going on there. Well, that's a little bit about David. On the topic of Eva and Star, one thing that really interests me about that rivalry is that Star still has the beware advantage and she still needs to find it on the loggy beach. So she's
Yep.
lucky that she was swapped into this position, but it's not clear like what would have happened if Star was sent over to Siva. Would she still need to solve that same mechanism to acquire the advantage without having the images around camp? That whole situation with Star was a bit confusing to me, and it makes me think that Eva is going to win this battle. You mentioned that Eva and David are growing closer. It seems like David is kind of slotting into that Joe role for Eva, but I don't necessarily think that David will ever replace Joe long term. I think this is kind of a temporary Joe replacement.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And you mentioned it with David too. He gets even more screen time this week. He's easily the most visible player of that original Siva tribe. He's shown working on the shelter. We get a segment of Mary hyping him up in confessional and calling him a gentleman. Like, this is a very pro David edit. And I kind of buy into it. I think people genuinely like David, with the exception of Charity.
And so that's what I was going to bring up next is that we get dueling confessionals from them. Charity starts talking, I think, to Star, but I'm not, I'd have to go back and check about how when they make a plan, David will do whatever she says. They just have to let him know right before the vote or he'll blow it up. And essentially says he's a follower. He'll do whatever I say. She then says it in confessional, right? That he's obedient and will do what she wants. Then we cut to his confessional where he says, yeah, I'm ready to burn that bridge. Like, I don't trust her, right? So clearly, David has a good head on his shoulders about how Charity sees him. And I mean, we've seen this before from the old Siva tribe. Nobody likes Charity. This is the first evidence I think we've seen of why. This feels like the first time we've seen her like have a misread and say, "Oh, he's like a brother to me. He'll do whatever I say." And he's like, "No." I don't think we had seen evidence in the first 3 episodes or enough evidence for me for Charity's kind of position on the bottom of the old Siva, but I can see where it's coming from now if she's totally misread their dynamic to that extent, right?
I got the sense through the first 3 episodes that Charity and Mitch were on the bottom of that tribe, but that's one of the downsides of not attending a tribal council in the pre-merge. You don't
Yeah.
know where people stand. And we see that Charity has the completely wrong read on the situation. She thought she was in the majority of the original Siva, and she thought that she had David as her little henchman. Now, from David's perspective, I appreciate that he has the right read on Charity. He knows that she's someone that doesn't really respect him, but I kind of disagree with his conclusion in that I need to get rid of Charity now. Like, Charity seems completely loyal to David, so why not allow her to continue to underestimate him and just work with her for a couple rounds because you know the other Siva people will be willing to cut her at some point.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Anything else at Loggy?
Those are the main ones I had at Locky. I feel like we saw the least from that tribe this week.
Really? Because I kind of feel like, oh no, we see some good stuff from Siva. Do you want to go to Siva next?
Yeah, let's run Siva.
Well, this was a cool thing that I have never seen on Survivor before. At Siva, they have cassava root. They've got more food. They have yuca. I love yuca fries. I gotta say, they are one of my favorite sides on Earth. And so, seeing that yuca or cassava, whatever you want to call it, exists in Fiji, I don't think it's native there, but the fact that it is there is pretty cool. So, and the fact that they've harvested it, they have a well-established camp. They have a kitchen at Siva. Things are
Yeah.
good at this tribe. So that was pretty cool to see.
It's a little bit reminiscent of Survivor China, where you had the Fei Long camp. I think you said that they were like at the top of the mountain.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
the
It was
mountain
like,
people and the mud people,
yeah,
where the Fei
yeah.
Long camp was very well put together. It was a well run tribe. And then you went to the Zhan Hu camp and it was flooded.
Good
They had a
memory.
terrible shelter, and it's kind of a similar dynamic that we get here with Lagi and Siva as compared to the Vula camp.
It's not quite so extreme, right? The Jean Hu, I haven't heard that name in 18 months or whatever it's been. But yeah, they were in mud. They were literally mud people, and this is just a little bit underestablished because they haven't won any rewards or had any team coherence. That was pretty cool to see. Say is absolutely thrilled, and Say makes fire, which I did note. I feel like it's worth noting anytime we see somebody make fire, just in case it's foreshadowing, right?
Oh, okay. I didn't write that down, but that's a good point.
I think that's one of those things. Who knows if there's any validity to it, but I do keep an eye on it.
You also had Joe last week making the bonfire. There's another potential fire maker for the end game.
And Say is not happy to be with Cedric. Say was really hoping to leave him behind for this swap. By the way, Siva is Say, Cedric, and Bianca coming in to join the original Siva members, Chrissy and Mitch.
Cedric seems completely loyal to Say, but Say has no interest in working with him
No,
anymore.
no.
And she's kind of taking a similar approach as David. She's willing to flip on Cedric. Bianca was looking for allies on that tribe, and she approaches Say and says, okay, maybe we can work together here. And Say isn't really on board. She says, you might want to check with Cedric. I don't really
Yep.
know what we'll see from him. Do you think this is the official end of the Say and Cedric alliance, or can we see them come back together?
I think it will depend on when we see them go to a vote, right? And on circumstance, but you never know, right? There is a line of communication. They're just not on the best terms. What I want to highlight here is Bianca's read and Bianca's move here, because Bianca is the only person from the old Loggy tribe, odd one out. She says in confessional, I've got to start hunting for cracks. Say serves the crack up on a platter. Don't clip that audio. Anyway, Say says, "Oh, I would check with Cedric, right? I can't speak for him." Immediately giving away that coherence as a unit, as a former tribe mate. Bianca knows where at least one of the lines is right away. This is not fleshed out any further in the episode, but it is a good move from Bianca. Like, I really like it when you have a swap tribe like this, right? And you have the 2-2-1 split. For the one person to not jump in and say, I want to join this tribe and vote out the other tribe, right? Not just jump into a majority, but try to break up the old power structures and build new ones. Really exciting stuff. So, big fan of that. We don't see Chrissy again. Chrissy continues to be horribly under edited, which is not great for me in fantasy, but is okay for me in the long run because, hey, maybe she'll make it to the end, right? Maybe Chrissy's the Brett. Chrissy's the Brett of the season. That's really what I'm feeling.
On the topic of Bianca, I just feel like she's thrown into such a horrible spot this week where theoretically she is the swing vote because you have 2 and 2 with her in the middle.
Good point.
But when you expand outward, you realize that Lagi, at this point in the episode, has not lost a member yet. The Siva and the Vula players could go after each other, but are you really getting a lot out of cutting another Vula contestant when they've already lost 3 people through the first 3 episodes? So I feel like Bianca has a target on her back, not due to any of her own social misplay, but just the tribe that she came from. And on top of that, she doesn't have a vote. And on top of that, Cedric is connecting with the Siva players. We get a segment of Cedric connecting with Mitch because they both have a history of stuttering. Cedric, I think, is such an interesting character on this season. I feel like he had a very strong first 2 episodes. He was operating the middle of that Vula tribe. Episode 3 is a disaster, as we discussed last week. And now he's found his way back into the majority. And the part that I have a difficult time with when it comes to Cedric is sometimes it feels like Cedric is not strategically aligning with people. For me, there are points where it just feels like Cedric's a nice guy and people want
Yeah.
to work with him, but he doesn't necessarily have the best strategic read on the game at large. So, like, I could see him going deep just because people like to have him around.
Yeah. I mean, this moment this week with him and Mitch, right? Where they relate over Mitch has a stutter, Cedric had a stutter growing up, right? They can bond over that, the shared experience, the keeping an eye out for triggers in your conversation to avoid having a moment of stuttering. That's a really nice moment. Does it say anything about strategic relationships between the two of them besides that they are now on good terms and friendly? No.
Well, after that conversation, Mitch pulls Cedric in with Chrissy, and the three of them all agreed to knock out Bianca next. So I think it started just as like a personal connection for Cedric that turned into a strategic relationship. And maybe
Yeah.
that was his intention from the very beginning. But I don't know. I just feel like Cedric hasn't been the most strategic player thus far this season.
I think he's leading with his heart, which I don't hate, right? That's a nice thing. It's a good thing to do to be that. We see it with Cedric, we see it with Joe, right? Of I want to establish strong relationships that are based in true connection, not just strategic motivation. That's nice. But Joe has some strategic metal to back that up. And we don't see that with Cedric. So, do you want to go to Vula?
I'm down to do the immunity challenge and then just all the Vula stuff before tribal council.
Oh, you okay. Yeah.
Because it's all just one consistent storyline of the underdogs and the California girls.
So we have yet again immunity and reward. The reward is fruit this week. Anytime there's a food reward like this, right? And Jeff pulls the tarp off, especially with fruit. A lot of these fruits are already chopped and in presentable form. So there's like half an orange or half a pomegranate, right? I think that's gross because imagine like the exposed flesh of an orange, right? Sitting under a tarp or exposed to the sun while you're out running around and flies are landing on it. I'm fine peeling my own orange if it means the inside wasn't getting covered in flies for 20 minutes.
I just thought it was funny that Jeff described the reward as immediate satisfaction, but as a viewer, we never see that immediate satisfaction. We get no screen time of them actually eating it after the challenge.
Yeah, we literally don't see those 2 tribes again. We never like, we see the rewards in action so rarely. Even today, with the tribe swap, the successful tribes' opulence and well-established camps are only shown in contrast to how horrible Vula is. Speaking of which, the challenge is a better challenge of the new era, involving rolling a massive cube down the field to retrieve some sandbags, tossing those sandbags through a picture frame essentially that can be knocked over and must be reassembled, and then building a giant puzzle, right? So, of course, there's a puzzle. I'll say this, we haven't seen a lot of knots this season, and that trend continues. Not a ton of arbitrary knots. And to break it down really quickly, Camilla claims this is Vula's first win. Vula comes out to an early lead. Mitch hits a couple of really clutch shots at the sandbag throwing stage. Second time we've seen him really do well with accuracy. Vula is in the lead for a long time. And then we get to the puzzle. And at the puzzle stage, it's everybody but Camilla and Shaheen are working on the puzzle for Vula. And new Vula, by the way, is the California girls of Shaheen, Joe, and Thomas, and then Kyle and Camilla from Siva. So Camilla is up on Shaheen's shoulders directing the puzzle, right? Because she can't help, but she can see everything. And she's good at puzzles. That's her thing. Thought it was hilarious because I didn't notice her get up on his shoulders. Just all of a sudden, she is 8 feet tall. It gets really close, but Vula has a misstep in the puzzle. Siva comes back to get second place. Logie wins first. Siva wins second. And Vula is sent to their fourth straight tribal.
This was a shocker for me. I feel like when I saw the composition of these three tribes before the episode, I thought that Vula was by far the strongest from a like physical and challenge perspective. I thought that they would steamroll their way up until the post merge. And going into this week, I thought that all five of these contestants would reach the second half of the game. I felt like they had edits that were more like long term story arcs. But that
Yeah.
didn't happen. And we're going to lose someone here. I'm trying to see if I have any other highlights from the challenge. The only other one to really throw out there is that when Vula walks into the challenge, they're all cheering. Camilla makes that comment about them breaking Vula's losing streak. And we'll need to wait till next week to see if they go back to tribal council for what, the fifth time in a row.
So just to follow up there, is this now the worst tribe? I mean, I know that there's been a swap and it's not the same people, But we've been talking so far this season about how this might be the worst tribe we've ever watched. 4 straight losses, that ties them, right?
I don't really count it
Ah,
because it's only the same colored buff. It's not even the same people. Like when I
okay.
judge the Lulu tribe from 45, I'm only looking at that original group before the swap and then how that original group performs for the rest of the season. But they're still in contention for being one of the worst tribes just because they
Yeah,
didn't win anything. Looking at the alliance dynamics for this group, Jack mentioned it. You got the three California girls, they're thick as thieves, and then you have a tight knit duo of Kyle and Camilla. And I thought this was a standout week for Camilla. Off the bat, they go to their camp and they're asked, Camilla, what's your relationship like with the rest of Siva? And on the spot, Camilla comes up with this entire lie and backstory. She says that I was on the bottom of that tribe. No one really took me seriously. And Kyle plays into it as well. He says, oh, you weren't really that isolated there.
yeah.
And this plan works to perfection. We get a confessional from Shaheen. He's duped by those Siva players on the bottom.
It is so well done, and I wish we had seen them discuss it beforehand
I don't know if they did. I think this was all improv.
because we see it in confessional, right? That they are determined to make the California girls think there is no chemistry here. We are not together. And it works flawlessly. It is really well done at every stage in the episode, right? At Tribal, even. Everything Kyle and Camilla say, especially Kyle at Tribal, but Camilla does a great job as well, gives nothing away that they have a relationship. It is pitch perfect deception that I feel like we haven't seen something like that in the new era, to be honest with you.
I feel like the last time we got something similar to this was Operation Italy in 47, like a group of players on the bottom that were able to trick the majority. So the two of them are going to stick together in this undercover operation, but they need to figure out who they want to target from the California girls. And this is where Thomas comes into play. Camilla got some insight from Star at a challenge earlier in the season where she learned that the journey that Thomas attended did not have an option to walk away. Thomas told his camp that he attended the journey, but he elected to not participate. So Camilla brings that up with the other California girls. She creates some suspicion around Thomas. And this was really frustrating for me because I think it's Kyle who says this in confessional, but he says just based off of like player quality and relationships, he would want to vote out Shaheen. He feels like he doesn't trust Shaheen at all compared to those other players. But with Thomas, you have this risk of an advantage coming from the journey, and that's why they want to target Thomas. And that's so frustrating for me because it feels like Thomas didn't make a massive mistake on his end. He actually tricked the rest of his tribe with that lie. It's just how the game goes sometimes and where you're selected for these journeys.
See, I think Thomas's only mistake in this episode is how he handles confrontation. When his tribe mates go to him and say, "Hey, this is what we heard," I think he plays it he's a little bit too quick to dismiss it and a little too sassy, a little too, "Oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about," right? And then it doesn't stop there. That's the problem. And then when they're discussing who to target, he is a little too focused on Camilla, I think.
See, I think that's the right read though, because Camilla doesn't have the idol.
But he doesn't know that.
It's still the better move for him because Camilla's actively going for him. And she's the person that doesn't have the advantage. Like Thomas is ultimately outvoted by Joe and Shaheen because the two of them want to go after Kyle. If Thomas got his way, he potentially survives this week.
And maybe this is being too nitpicky, but I think Thomas is a really great player, and I could see him. I mean, this is an early boot for him to come back, right?
Yeah.
But if he did come back, the only mistake he really makes is I would say he needs to be more subtle with how he goes after Camilla. It's kind of presented, at least, as tunnel vision and him going, I've got to get her out because she's blowing up my spot. If Thomas had stuck around longer and Camilla had stuck around longer, if some other permutation of this had gone down, I could see Thomas and Joe's relationship struggling because of this, right? And I could see him fixating on trying to preserve self-preservation, giving away the fact that he doesn't have or does have what he said he has. For someone with a really deft hand and good instincts, there was just a couple of moments of clumsiness from him almost, where I think he's better than that.
I feel like the only thing that you can really fault Thomas for, well, there's two things. First is the whole bag search situation, where again, it's not his idea. The person who searches the bag is
Yeah,
Shaheen, and he
yeah,
doesn't even find Kyle's idol. But they do that search right in front of Camilla, which essentially tells her that Kyle is the target. Thomas wasn't the head person of that search, but he at least enabled Shaheen to do it. I think that's one mistake that he makes. He also fails to play his vote steal at tribal council. That was an
yeah.
opportunity for him to snag someone else's vote and potentially change the outcome. But outside those, I feel like he made the right move just about every step of the way this season. He's very well insulated on the original Logi tribe. This week, he has the correct target pinned, and the only reason why he is targeted is because he attended a journey. So I'm a Thomas defender till the very end.
I want him to come back. I think Thomas, of the people we've lost this season so far, I wish we'd seen him make the merge.
Oh, 100%. He was my favorite character on the entire cast. Yeah, he was my winner pick too, but I also think he just makes great TV.
Yeah,
I think he has a
yeah.
confessional this week where after Camilla calls him out for the advantage, he says that, yes, I'm lying to my allies, but that's none of your business. Like, he has a very diabolical vibe to him, and I think he's such a fun villain on the show. It's so rare that you get pre-mergers coming back, but I would for sure cast a vote for Thomas. Is there anything else you want to hit on at this Vula tribe? We talked about the bag search. We talked about them targeting Thomas.
I want to talk about their options, right? Shaheen and Thomas option, right? Joe's name never comes up. I think Thomas is the right read. I mean, he is a bigger threat from everything we've seen on the season. We don't get to see any relationship building between the old Logi and the old Siva members. The two camps stay really divided, and all we really get to see is tactics from them. And I almost feel like the editor for Vula was assigned to Vula, right? There's an editor for Siva and Logi, and there's an editor for Vula. And the Vula editor has decided this tribe is cursed. They're always going to tribal. So you know what? I'm not going to bother to show a single ounce of personality or relationship building, right? Because what we saw this week with these five characters, people, not characters, these five players is the exact same kind of edit we've seen from Vula the whole season.
I think it's just difficult to fit in that character side when you're running a tribe swap episode. You need to kind of give highlights from each
Yeah.
tribe. You can't sway the edit one direction more than the other. One other thing that I'll throw out here before we go to tribal council is the edit of the California girls, where I feel like this episode dumps a lot of the blame for the Thomas boot on Shaheen. He's the one going into confessional and saying Camilla and Kyle aren't working together. He's
Yeah.
the one at camp searching through Kyle's bag. I do like a tier list every single week on TikTok, and for the past 2 weeks, Shaheen was my top person, but not anymore. So I can lock in my official winner pick now, my last one for the season, and the person who I genuinely think is going to win, and that's Joe.
You think Joe's winning?
I think Joe's winning. I think the Joe Eva alliance has been a constant storyline of this season. When they're swapped to opposite tribes, we get a confessional from Eva saying, I'm really going to miss Joe when I go over there. And then this week, Joe could have received a very negative edit. He was one of the people campaigning to vote out Kyle, while Thomas wanted to get rid of Camilla. So he could have gotten a bad edit, but instead, he's shown when they first go back to the Vula camp, kind of criticizing the quality of the campsite, and then he
Yeah.
disappears. I think he's
Yeah.
shielded a lot from the blame of this elimination, which gives me a lot of confidence in him for the long run. Plus, you have the whole storyline of him saying, I want to go on this show and make my kids proud. I think there's some positive trajectory there with Joe. So I'm locking him in as my final winner pick of the season.
All right. So when Joe goes home next week, I will be the only one with a winner pick for the rest of the season.
Okay. We'll need to wait and see. I feel better about Joe than Chrissy. I think you do too.
Oh, I was forced into Chrissy because she was my first round draft pick. I wish her the best. Chrissy will get the Brett edit. She'll be Chef Chrissy. She'll be cooking in the final five, and we'll see who's laughing then. But yeah, let's go to tribal. It's episode 4 took a month. And it's only the second time Jeff has said that fire is your life, which is pretty brutal. And he's saying it to the same tribe, just to different people. Like I said earlier, Kyle and Camilla, great acting in this. Really great.
They give their goodbye speeches at tribal council. Camilla
Yeah.
is in tears over the lessons that she's learned on Survivor. And the California girls are not subtle at all here. Thomas straight up says that it'll be one of the two people on the bottom going home.
Quote, I know we're about to take something away from these two. Pretty smug. Pretty smug. But frank, right? I mean, actually, Joe complains about this in the post challenge scenes. He doesn't like how all the young people have to talk about what they're going to do before they do it and sort of be like, oh, we're still friends. We'll grab a beer after this. He doesn't like that they're not like kind of button heads. It's a pretty good tribal knowing what's in play, right? I was excited for this.
Yeah, I'm ready for the vote. So it's 3 votes on Kyle, 2 on Thomas. Kyle stands up, plays his idol, and gives a shout out to Survivor 46, where he says that a bunch of people got voted out with idols in their pockets. He's not going to continue that trend. All 3 votes for Kyle are negated, and Thomas goes home. He did not play his vote steal here, and I don't know if the extra vote was played in this tribal council either. I know we see Camilla saying that Kyle can take her extra vote, but I don't know if that was actually played. I'll also throw out that we get a small segment in the edit before tribal council of Camilla telling Kyle to play the idol. So even though this is technically Kyle's big moment at tribal council of making himself immune, I think that the edit gives a bit more credit to Camilla. Thomas is going out here. We both spoke highly of Thomas earlier on the podcast. I want to see him back in the future. I think he's easily the best holistic player that's been voted out so far this season.
I don't remember the last time. I mean, I don't remember things anyway, but Thomas is the best earliest boot I can remember. That's how I'm going to phrase it.
It's a real toss up. I'll do my player ranking towards the end of the season, but I don't know who had an unluckier elimination between Thomas and Pizza Guy. I'd say Pizza Guys was probably a bit unluckier because of the whole shot in the dark situation,
Oh, yeah.
but I'd still say that Thomas is the slightly better player. And I'd
Yes.
love to see him come back in the future, but it's just tough when it comes to pre-merge boots. You want to do winners and losers?
Yeah. Who is your loser? I bet we match here.
I thought about giving it to someone from the California girls, but there's another player on this cast who I think is in an even worse position, and that's Charity. Is yours
Oh,
also Charity?
no.
Oh, okay. So I'm giving it to Charity. I feel like Charity has literally one ally on the entire cast in Mitch, but outside that, everyone on her original Siva tribe wants to get rid of her, and now on her swap tribe, she has David gunning for her, but she's completely oblivious to that. I feel like there's other contestants on this cast, like a Star, who are on a tribe with an enemy, but at least Star knows who is the enemy. Charity doesn't have that information. So I think she's set up to either go out in the swap section of the game, or she could be an easy consensus boot at the Mergatory where you have like 12, 13 people all coming together and they say, we got to cut someone that nobody trusts. We got to find the Rome on the cast. And that could easily be Charity.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that's a very fair case for Charity. My loser's Bianca. I think Charity's a close second for me, but I feel like Bianca is going to lure someone else into an alliance and then it's going to go south because she doesn't have the vote. She's in a tough spot. She has to go through, she has to go to a tribal without a vote. And who knows when that's going to happen, right? But it's got to happen at some point. She doesn't have an ally, right? She's trying to find the cracks. We see her working. She's putting in the time and the effort. I just don't like her chances. So she's my loser.
I think the difficult part with Bianca is that she talks a lot this week about finding cracks in the alliances. But I think the ideal strategy for Bianca would be that the 2 Siva players on her tribe in Mitch and Chrissy, and then the 2 Vula members on her tribe in Say and Cedric vote for each other. That way, she's technically playing the middle, but she doesn't have a vote. You would end up with the 2-2 split, and then on the revote, Bianca would be completely safe. Like, I think the worst case scenario for her is that those 2 pairs start to crumble and look towards other targets on the tribe, because that's where she becomes in danger. That's a solid loser. I bet we have the same winner, though. Winner is Camilla, right?
Oh, yeah, big time.
100% winner going to Camilla. I think she's the one that really initiates this entire plan of making the California girls underestimate her. I also think that she gets a lot more credit in the edit for this move. I think her and Kyle will do well long term, but I have more confidence in Camilla lasting longer on this season.
I loved her moves. The deception this week was really great. We've seen a lot more Camilla action than Kyle action in their entire relationship, which I think bodes well from an editing perspective. She's on my fantasy team, I think.
But do you have an honorable mention?
My honorable mention this week goes to the country of Guyana.
Okay.
Both Camilla and Kyle are Guyanese, and here's how crazy that is to find someone else on Survivor that is also Guyanese. They had to end up on the same tribe, right? They had to be selected for the same season. There are less than 250,000 Guyanese Americans in the United States. Guyana is not a big country anyway. Most of the Guyanese people in America live in New York. They're the fifth largest foreign community living in New York. I've read a bunch about Guyana today because I was really interested and I didn't know anything. Obviously, country in South America on the northeast coast. It's the third smallest state in South America. Venezuela is trying to take a region of Guyana from it. They are essentially trying to get the UN to intervene because Venezuela keeps encroaching. There's all this stuff, right? The first African American woman to serve in Congress was Guyanese American, Shirley Chisholm, first Black woman elected to the US Congress. Pretty cool. She was a congresswoman from Bed-Stuy. And yeah, it's a fascinating country with, a rich history of kind of persevering through oppression and all of that. All of that to say, this is a small country with a even smaller population in America. And this alliance of Kyle and Camilla is based on their shared connection. That's a beautiful thing and, worth celebrating.
That's a good honorable mention. Good pick. I was getting ready for another history lesson, but I felt like that was a nice pivot in a different direction. I thought we were going to have to hear about the Dolphins for the next 10 minutes.
No, it was that or a deep dive on cassava. Uh,
Oh, okay. Yeah, you made the right pick then. I'll give a dishonorable mention to Survivor 50 voting. Did you see the 3 questions that were posed this week?
I did not.
So there's 3 polls. One of them, super straightforward. Do you want to see a tribe swap? Yes or no? It's going to be like 95% of people saying yes. It's just a way to get a more dynamic post-merge.
Pre-merge.
Well, pre-merge and post-merge, because then you have more alliances going into the second half of the game, more dynamic gameplay. That's a solid question. I don't know if it was one that we even really needed to ask, because I think most people will vote in favor for it, but I'm all in favor of the illusion of say.
I would rather Survivor have some method of almost like a shot in the dark, but for a tribe swap, even when the tribes are balanced. I would be so much more interested in a tribe swap as production interference when it's not forced by a tribe's incompetence like we've seen this season, right?
Oh, yeah. I completely agree. If it was just like a built-in part of the game, no matter the outcome through the first 3 episodes.
Yeah.
So
But
that's the first thing that you can vote on. I'm totally okay with that question. The other 2 are ridiculous, though. One of them is advantages, and you get these vague descriptions on the kinds of powers for the advantages. You can vote for minimal power, dynamic power, or strategic power. It isn't super clear what those mean, so I'm under the impression that if we pick, I think dynamic power is like the craziest advantages on the board. If we pick that option, production's going to go wild with it. So I'm voting for minimal power just because there's a lack of information here. I don't trust production to have like the keys to the car, basically. And honestly, they could have made that question better by just including examples of advantages for each of those powers. So that
yeah,
question, kind of ridiculous, a little bit broken.
yeah.
And the one that you will hate the most out of these 3,
Is it about a puzzle?
you can vote on the final immunity challenge of the season. We get 3 options. None of them are classic old school challenges. One of them is legit an obstacle course ending in a puzzle. And then the other 2 is Samotion, that game where you drop the ball
Yeah.
and it goes down that mechanism.
I
and
don't
the
hate
other
that.
is a puzzle going along with like a pinball style machine where you throw a ball to the top, work on the puzzle, need to run back and grab the ball and do it again. We saw that on 46.
Yeah, I like those.
I like those, but they're also challenges that we've seen fairly recently. We saw Samotion in 44. So it's just weird to me that, like, if Survivor 50 is meant to be this monumental season that pays homage to old school Survivor, why are we not including any old school challenges for the final immunity challenge of the season? So I thought these were pretty disappointing questions this week, and I think we'll have two more rounds of voting. So there is an opportunity for production to redeem itself.
I mean, it's kind of offensive to say, "Hey, what would you like for this challenge? Something you've seen a million times, an obstacle with puzzles, or these two classics?"
Well, they're classics, but they're classics that we've seen in the last like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see why they can't introduce new challenges for this big season. I get it for all the other new era ones. It's copy and paste. We got to keep the budget low. But if we're going to build up 50 as this big monumental event, let's have the challenges match that energy.
Well, let's hope this, right? Let's hope most of the challenges are big, are new, are crazy, right? Or even if the challenge itself isn't that crazy, at least make it like the balance challenge in China
Oh, yeah.
on the dragon.
Yeah, the one that Courtney won.
Yeah, it's not that crazy of a challenge, but it's crazy in its visual, right? It was a cool one to watch. And then end with a classic. I'm fine with them ending with Samotion, actually. My bigger problem with them asking what it should be, because they won't film that for a while, right? They'll film that.
They'll film that in around like 3 months, I'll say.
That gives all of those contestants some time to practice. Like, hey, Samotion's on the table. I'm going to do some, I've built a Samotion and I'm going to practice it.
I think my big concern with it is that if these are the three options for the final immunity challenge, that means that all the other challenges this season are going to be copy and paste ones from the new era. It just gives me a lot less confidence in the production side of things for challenges, but I don't care that much about it. So I'm just giving you the heads up to be disappointed in what? The spring of 2026.
A year from now. Okay. Well,
Okay.
on that
That's
note,
everything for this week.
next week, say is a knife in the next time on. So things should get crazy. But thanks for listening. We don't say this enough. A, thank you for listening. B, be sure to follow us mostly on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. Those are kind of the big three.
Or Blue Sky/Threads, right? That's your area of expertise.
You can follow us on Blue Sky or Threads. I don't update either of them because I don't watch the show live. Maybe one day that will change. But follow us on YouTube for like video stuff for the longer form pieces Clyde puts together. TikTok, obviously, at survivor_analytics. If you rate the show, that'd be cool.
We get a bunch of ratings on Spotify, but not as many on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah. So if you're like, hey, I like this show, just give us a little rating. And if you don't like it, that's
Go
okay.
home.
Yeah. If you don't like it, Rachel's on Jeff's podcast, so go listen to that.
And also, speaking of Rachel, one project I've been releasing for the month of March, I've been doing my winner rankings on both Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube. And this upcoming Monday, I'll be releasing my top 10. I don't know if we've covered one winner that's in my top 10. We talked about
Wow.
Todd on China. So he's in that elite group for me. But
Good old Todd.
at the end of every season, we talk about winners rankings and season rankings. If you want my in-depth explanation, I think the final winner ranking podcast is like 3.5 to 4 hours. So you can just listen to me yap about different winners for that entire stretch. But thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.